So I'll do that now.
Came through, so it said so.
There it said so. All right, so we have up here our monthly agenda. We have 3 unique speakers again this month. I get so excited each month at what our speakers are going to exchange with us and network. So our first one is Kaila Anderson. Kaila and I have not met in person, but we've been talking for a while since last fall about this project that she's going to share with you today. And I'm excited to kind of be one of those producers that she has asked to weigh in and give feedback on. So I really like her project and am excited that she's able to share with us today. So I will stop sharing so that Kaila can go ahead and start with her presentation.
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity, Carrie, and thanks to AgriSafe as well. So I am Kaila, and I'm with LandLogic, honoring the connection to the land. What is that? I have a master's in social work. A little bit about me. Came from Missouri, and we've been in West Kansas, and now we live in Denver. But more importantly to this target population is the fact that I grew up in agriculture. I'm the 5th generation beef cattle operation in Northeast Kansas. Did 4-H. Only thing I don't have is the blue corduroy jacket from FFA. So the vision of LandLogic is to meaningfully connect farmers, ranchers, and their families to behavioral health content through the land. And within the clinical context, we believe this will build the therapeutic trust, which increases in retention rates and can promote positive outcomes. What is it and what is it not? It is a new approach designed to evaluate the common thinking patterns among the agricultural community and optimize their strengths. It's meant to be a bridge between licensed mental health professionals that are already serving in rural areas and how they engage with the agricultural-based client. And in the future, it's intended to be a resource for independent use. We are not there yet. What LandLogic is not, it is not a crisis intervention model per se. Maybe a few of the components could be used in that realm, but it's really a front-loading, it's intended to be on the front-loading end of the spectrum when we talk about behavioral health care for farmers and ranchers. There's amazing crisis intervention models out there, and they're doing amazing things, and we need them, and they need to continue. It is not brick and mortar. It's a thinking pattern. It's meant to be how someone thinks about the agricultural community. And it's not prescriptive in nature, meaning that for a licensed mental health provider that's trained in LandLogic, we are not claiming to be the end all be all. It's really designed to give them a framework to launch from, and then use their own creativity and their own expertise and knowledge to create the best agriculturally responsive care model for that particular client in front of them. So the premise, where did this come from? Again, I grew up in ag community, and it's a really trifecta of my lived experiences in ag, my parents' story through the 1980s farm crisis, where we are now because of that, and also lived experiences as a role-based therapist and a board member at a community mental health center in Western Kansas. This launched because of one photo. And so anyone that wants to jump in, but what's the, next to the family photo, what is the next most commonly framed image on a farm or ranch?
You guys can unmute and just holler out if you want.
Yep, anybody can just shout it out.
Farm picture.
Yes. Yes, the aerial. And when I mean the aerial, I really mean any representation. It could be the supreme champion, Holstein for the dairy, or a sire, but some kind of representation connecting them to the land. For my family, it is the generational viewpoint of the aerial. Why is that important? Thankfully, there is a tangible representation of a farmer's connection to the land, as in the aerial. And that's really important when you talk about values. And I'll go into this a little bit, but I only, 10 minutes, we got to cover the top level. I show this image to farmers and ranchers when I present to them, and they really respond to it. I think if we can figure out how to create meaningful messages for mental health providers that maybe don't come from ag, we can start creating a safe place for farmers and ranchers, even if that person does not know everything about corn stalks. I don't. I only know beef cattle. That was something else that resonated for me. I don't know dairy. I know beef cattle. I don't know row crop. I don't know peaches and fruits or sugar beets. So that's really important, that we can't be all things to all people. But we can sure create avenues by which there can be connection points. So I was thinking, is this just a figurative imagination in my head, or does this have some meat behind it? And N equals 67. I've been in front of 67 farmers and ranchers with this concept and presented it. And when I have them do an exercise when I present, and I have them draw the aerials, so they don't even have to have the actual photo, but you can create exercises that they can connect to. And so with a blank sheet of 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, I had them draw their aerial, of which everyone can do. And then I asked a series of questions. Again, this was not meant to be therapeutic in nature, so we went high level, we went positive. And the cool part is you don't have to be super artsy to do this, right? But whoever drew this image, they know exactly where that windbreak is, and they know exactly what's inside of that barn that they drew. I don't have to know that as a clinician. They do. They can bring that to the therapeutic context, and we can create meaningful experiences for them. So 2 questions of really interesting to me was, one, that I asked is, if you consider the aerial photo important to you, why? And really, there's the agrarian imperative by Rosman. I'm not going to go into that, but that's looking at the genetic disposition of farming. In addition to that, there is the generational aspect, the legacy. When I asked this question, they answered, and some of these were some of their answers: peace, hard work, walking the same ground as the past generation. So this one I would have put into the both category. And I am not a researcher, so this is me not having the perfect questions and being able to dissect it. But so hold this research loosely, right? Ambivalent emotions. It made me who I am, but how do I sustain this? That could be that reveals a lot of tension that they might be bringing to the therapeutic context. The legacy of working as a family farm. That would be both. It's my safe zone. That's really an insightful one in my mind, and creates even more value in my mind as to why this might have some reasonable value to it. Another one was, if you could zoom in on one aspect of farming or ranching that brings you joy, again, I stayed on the positive side, what aspect would it be? Harvest, excitement, renewal of the spring lambs. Quite a few had the life cycle in there. Watching the goat kids play, smell of the rain, baled hay, moving livestock. If this is not the epitome of both legacy and agrarian imperative put together, moving livestock to fresh pasture with my kids at my side. That's what I know about ag. So here's the point with LandLogic. As we train mental health providers, we're deep diving into the legacy, we're deep diving into the agrarian imperative, and trying to create experiences and exercises that they can try to use within the clinical context. And what it really is doing is, APA came out with a study a while ago that said, therapeutic trust will enhance the effectiveness of evidence-based practices. This is also ecological in nature. When we think about a farmer, we can put them in the ecological context of their farm, which is of high value. And it optimizes the deep cultural values of hard work, independence, love of the land, resiliency, and the 5 senses. I need to get going, but 5 senses meaning that this population knows how to use their touch, taste, hear, and all their senses. And when you can create meaningful experiences for them, they might connect. So the goal is, we train how a therapist can understand if a farmer is connected to the land, how they're connected to the land, and why they're connected to the land in order to create meaningful experiences. And we're creating a LandLogic provider network by which we can hope to bridge that gap for any mental health provider already out there doing this good work. Here are our learning objectives. And another crucial part is Farm Tool. I've been working with Chad Rezenchek with Colorado AgriBusiness in WARSAP, And he's helped me with his clinical knowledge develop the farm tool, which is a series of about 1 to 5 sessions and ways to work through and incorporate the land into the initial beginning sessions for a farmer, rancher, or their family members. The goal is, let's basically take CBT worksheets and take it and make it into an experiential opportunity with their own land by which they're connected to. And then we go through a series of other experiences or exercises. And these are just from my head that I threw out there on a piece of paper. Again, the goal is that a therapist can tailor this to the client in front of them, whether that be a relationship problem or something connected to the land, the finances, the legacy, fear of losing the farm, alcohol addictions, all those things can be, if they value the land, the stronger they value the land, the more likely land logic concepts will work. The goal is that we want our farmers and ranchers who produce our food to become resilient and learn their own skills at optimizing their protective factors for their own health and well-being. Other supporting organizations of this concept are Colorado Agricultural Addiction and Mental Health Program. I trained their therapist. And then Colorado Farm Bureau has endorsed this, as well as the AgriBusiness of Utah and Colorado AgriBusiness through chat work. I am done. Here's my contact information. We are going to, it's new, it's launching. And we just did our first training for mental health providers and got their feedback and are going to rework that, tweak it if needed, and then begin scheduling out other providers so that they can become a part of this network. Any questions?
Yeah, you guys can unmute and go ahead and ask. If you want to, go ahead and take a screenshot of Kaila's contact information, but we'll have her put that in the chat as well so that you can copy that. But just go ahead and unmute, or if you're too shy, just go ahead and put it in the chat. And Kaila, do you want to tell them how, like, when you actually started, when you founded this?
Sure. A year ago, we moved to Denver because of the health needs of our own kids. Talk about health professional shortage areas. That's lived experience. We had to move in order to get the resources we needed. So now we live in Denver, and I wanted to stay connected to who and what raised me. And because of my own parents' journey and seeing the need in this group, this is what I can offer. And so as it started a year ago and really haven't done anything publicly, just gaining insight from farmers and ranchers and mental health providers before launching anything publicly.
Kaila, this is Tara Haskins, Total Farmer Health Director at AgriSafe. I just joined, but I'm so glad I did and got the tail end of this.
Oh.
This is a fantastic tool, and I'm going to reach out to you because I think there may be some opportunities. We have Farm Response, which is directed generally to farm people, healthcare providers that interact with the farming community to hopefully get them into counseling. But I love that this is so heavy in the treatment aspect for mental health counselors and techniques they can use in their own practice. So I'm going to reach out to you to see if there's a way we can kind of cross promote this.
That'd be great. And on that note, while LandLogic Provider is designed specifically for licensed mental health providers, because I really want to set them apart, like Clinton and I have been talking, I think to me, there's a spectrum of care, and we will never have enough mental health providers. So for peer support groups or anyone else to even know that this exists, have a few exercises that they can use and understand why, and then launch into a LandLogic provider network, if that's what they believe would be helpful, is how I see it playing out too. So that'd be great.
Great.
We do have a question in the chat, Kaila. It's, will LandLogic, the mental health provider training, be offered nationwide eventually?
That's the goal.
Yeah.
The goal would be that this is provider network is for anyone and everyone that wants to serve this population, and then they can get access to the logo and use it for their own promo. And that logo just becomes a symbol of we respect your connection to the land, and we don't know everything, but we honor you and want to bring that in for your own therapeutic healing. Again, it's not brick and mortar. This is to enhance what's already out there and who's already doing great work. So.
All right. If you guys think of questions once we move on, just go ahead and put them in the chat and we'll go ahead and bring them back up. So we'll go ahead and let our next presenter, Karen, go ahead and start sharing. Karen and I met at the National AgriBusiness Conference in March. And whenever I met her, I knew she needed to be a presenter at our AgriStress monthly meeting to share what they're doing up in Wisconsin to help our agriculture community and their mental health aspects. All right.
All right, sorry about that. Had to make all these things happen because I have some exciting audio and video to share with you guys today. So thank you so much for inviting me to be here. I'm really excited to share about what we're doing in Wisconsin, and I have a few samples of some things we're doing, especially during May, our Mental Health Awareness Month. So we're going to start off today. I'll just give a brief background. My name is Karen Endres. I am married to a dairy farmer, not surprising in Wisconsin, as that is our biggest farming population. And my husband and I own and operate a dairy farm with his two brothers and their families. So right now, we're in the process of bringing in that next generation. So as always, lots of stress when you're going through those types of transitions, and it's all around the family and the legacy. So really appreciated Kaila's presentation on LMSWLandLogic for sure. Related to that, I thought about the pictures right away that hang in our farm office and the legacy and the land that are so important to us. So I wanted to start off by taking a look at what are the major stressors for Wisconsin farmers and how throughout the pandemic, some of these have continued or increased for our farmers. So we did a farm focus group in 2020. And what we're finding in Wisconsin, I think you're going to find across the country for our farmers, that time pressure being extremely stressful for our farmers. How do we get it all done in a day? I don't know about the rest of the country, but in Wisconsin, we have had a very cold and very wet spring. So that time pressure is only going to mount for us coming the next couple of weeks. Now, we've been in the 40s with wind chills. Next week, I saw 82 on one day. So that flow of that weather has been really challenging for our farmers this year. Management of the farm, that's really, really tough, especially when you have multiple generations and the complexity that we're seeing, right, with all the different variables and what the pandemic and what's going on in the world with Ukraine and how that has changed some of our input prices. Unpredictable income, there we go. Those markets on both sides, right, of our businesses. Isolation, the pandemic really hit that one hard for us. Not only in our rural communities were they isolated, but now just that extreme isolation with the pandemic. Farm succession, I've already talked about that, and those interpersonal relationships that can also have a lot of conflicts. Some other stressors we saw: COVID, of course, the financial management, pressure to expand and improve, daily unpredictability, and what about life? That's always a big one. So as we all know, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. What can we do and what are we doing in Wisconsin? We're really working hard to educate farmers about stress, anxiety, depression, and suicide. How great to partner with groups like AgriSafe, their QPR training. I loved it so much, I took it twice, and that's how I met Carrie. So I took it virtually, and I really wanted to take it in person and was able to do that. Here's a graphic I created through a group that I work with, Resilient Farms and Families, where we partner with our University of Wisconsin Extension. Really just trying to tell people, don't stand on the other side of the fence. I like to say observation is a superpower of most farmers. What do I mean by that? Well, they know, right? If you're a livestock farmer and you walk through your calves, they'll probably know that one of their calves is sick before it has a fever, right? That's their superpower. They know, they're so in tune to it. What about the land? They know maybe if they're going to have some insect problems with their crop before that problem really has gone to a full outbreak, because they're in touch with the land. Love how I'm flowing right after the LandLogic presentation and how connected we are. So use that observation superpower, right? Let's talk to people about using that to notice signs and symptoms from their friends, family, employees, neighbors. Don't be scared to stop and talk. Reach out and get those trainings, whether it's the mental health first aid, QPR, go out and do those. Let's promote rebuilding communities. How about our social communities and our business communities that the pandemic, even our family communities that the pandemic took away from us? Let's figure out ways to rebuild those. I always like to share, I've talked to so many farmers, they stopped going to the coffee shop. Maybe the coffee shop closed in the pandemic. We as people need to connect. That's where we share ideas. That's where we touch base and know we're not alone. We need to rebuild those business meetings. We need to get those card clubs back going. We need to continue to share our resources, because they need to know all these great things that all of us are doing. We need to make sure they're aware of them. So here's one thing, a couple of things actually that we're doing at the Wisconsin Farm Center to make sure they know. You'll see the graphic on the screen. That is a sample of an advertisement that we're running. We were very fortunate to receive some COVID relief money from the federal government, and we're able to do some promotion and advertising. So this ad has run in some of our ag publications. I'm just going to take 30 seconds to play a commercial that is just starting this week to share how we can talk to farmers about not being alone and what resources are there.
Farmers, is your stress starting to affect your work or your relationships? Feeling stressed about finances or weather is common in farming. You're not alone. It can happen to any of us. From vouchers for in-person counseling to telecounseling from the comfort of your home, the Wisconsin Farm Center is here to help. If you're feeling overwhelmed, take that first step. Call toll-free 888-901-2558. That's 888-901-2558. A message from the Wisconsin Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection.
Those are just a couple of things we're doing to really create awareness. And yes, we are housed in a government agency that does a lot of regulation. So it's really important for us to show the farmers that we are here for them. We want to help them and share our programs. So we have multiple programs to reduce barriers and meet the needs of farmers and their families. We know every situation is unique. To help, we offer the 4 main services you see in those circles. So it's there when they need it, how they need it, and most importantly, all these services are free and confidential. Our 24/7 Farmer Wellness Helpline, it's that in-the-moment counseling. Yes, available 24/7, 365, staffed by a team of experienced stress counselors. We're partnered with a group called Iowa Concerns, who started this program with their stress counselors with a federal grant, and that's offered in our region. So we're able to tap into that great resource. It's unlimited calls, and it has been really great for our farmers and their families when they have that 2 a.m. moment and they're stressed and they can't sleep. It's great to have someone to talk to. Another program that we have is our telecounseling program. It's ongoing scheduled counseling. It can be available via phone or web video. It's with a licensed mental health professional who is familiar with rural Wisconsin and farming. And that's really, really important, because we heard from farmers that they feel more comfortable and sometimes will only talk to someone who they feel understands farming and rural living. So this is free and confidential. Here's some reasons we saw telecounseling in our fiscal year 2021. Family problems was a big one, just general stress, relationships, or job related. In that fiscal year, we held 56 sessions with that telecounselor. So it's really important. But like I said, we need to make sure that they're comfortable. So I'm going to show a short video next that will introduce you to our telecounselor. Her name is Jess. She is contracted by us to work with farmers and their families. And we can typically get an appointment set up in 3 to 5 business days. So it's a really important service that we can connect farmers to.
I'm Jessica Beauchamp, a licensed clinical social worker and a substance abuse specialist in the state of Wisconsin. I contract with the Farm Center. We know that a farm is only as healthy as its farmer. So we want to make sure that farmers are getting help. With my private practice, I actually do non-traditional counseling. And so I go to farmers at their farm. I also do a lot of in-home counseling. And so it's a lot less invasive. It's a lot less intimate. So you can walk shoulder to shoulder and just talk about the stressors that are going on in their life and coming up with some solutions together.
So we are really fortunate to have Jess as part of our team, working with farmers, and it's a great program that I like to say I'm that bridge, right? I can connect farmers to these programs. Another program we offer that we've offered for a very long time in the state of Wisconsin, but most recently, it's now being funded through our state legislature with the support of our governor. And so this is our counseling voucher program. These are ongoing scheduled in-person counseling, covers the cost of those appointments. And here's some data from our fiscal year 21. Counseling vouchers, we redeemed an all-time high of 176 vouchers, about a 77% voucher redemption rate. You can see the value of those vouchers. They're $100 for a 50 to 60 minute appointment. And we currently have, as of the end of the fiscal year, was 229 licensed providers in 67 of our 72 counties. So you can see some of that data, but it's really important that those are spread out. But again, if we don't have an in-person counselor, we have that telecounseling option. And a lot of times farmers like that option because we estimate about 3 hours to go to an appointment, right? Come in from the barn, get changed, drive to the appointment, have the appointment, get back home. So it can be a really big time saver, especially when we know time is a #1 stressor for our farmers. Another one, farmer and farm couple support groups. We currently have 2 of them per month, running on the second Tuesday and the fourth Monday. These bring farmers and farm couples together to share ideas, provide encouragement, build community, right? We're back to those themes. You're not alone. Here's community. Jess actually is available on those calls and moderates, as well as we have peer leaders that are farmers in Wisconsin that have training to come in and assist in those calls. We found 60 minutes to be that perfect spot at length of time for our farmers. And participants can choose to be anonymous or on screen. So it really goes to what their comfort level is. One last program we offer is our Rural Realities podcast. We currently have 15 episodes. We're over 1,000 downloads. Some of our recent topics are identifying and resetting some unhealthy default settings and using a positive mindset and gratitude to handle daily farm stress. So I encourage you to take a listen to some of those. We have some on interpersonal communications. We have some out there on the stigma of mental health. So they're a great listen and encourage you. Yes, they're for Wisconsin, but you can share these out too as resources to farmers that you might work with. So I officially want to conclude, and I want to say thank you for inviting me today, for taking the time to learn about what we're doing in Wisconsin, listen and watch a little bit about how we're trying to connect farmers to those resources. And I want to end with a quote from one of my farmers, clients that I work with quite regularly, connecting him out to resources. And he called me one day and he said, please continue what you're doing, sharing these resources, because Karen, there is hope. So that just touches my heart to know that yes, there is hope. And by all these different resources pulling together our national efforts, our state efforts, that we can continue to work together and help farmers, because yes, they are the stewards of the land and they are the people who feed our neighbors, our community, and our country. So looking forward to taking any questions or being a resource. Feel free to email me, call me, connect with me. Would love to share and talk about your ideas and what we're doing in Wisconsin.
Thank you, Karen. You have a plethora of resources. Like, that is so encouraging. I know that you have the link up here, but for convenience sake, would you want to go ahead and post the link to that in the chat? And then that way people can just go ahead and click on it. And if you have any questions, just go ahead and unmute and holler out.
Other than Karen, we know of some states that have voucher programs or have the beginnings of voucher programs, and they've shared with us they're having some trouble getting providers and stuff to buy into that system. So if you don't mind, I may see if I reach out to them and maybe a connection with you, since your program has gained some success and some traction. That might be a helpful conversation for them to discuss with you, maybe the strategies that you used.
Absolutely. And there are some, we had that trouble as well starting off. And so I'm happy to share our biggest success was connecting through our licensing agency and having them send out information on our program to all the licensed therapists in the state of Wisconsin, see who are in rural communities and might be interested in the program. And then connecting with like the National Association of Social Workers and other organizations to connect us and explain our programs and talk to the people about farm stress. So there are definitely some things we can share because we were there.
Okay.
We've been there, done that, and still continuing to grow our program.
Karen, I had one question about the support groups. You mentioned the couples support groups. Have you had any experience? Have you guys done any pilots with just individual farmer support groups, not necessarily involving couples?
Actually, we've kind of changed. We were couples only. Well, we had couples, individuals. We've morphed into one. You can be a couple and or individual and come on those calls. We have probably it's 50-50 on those monthly meetings where we'll have some couples, some come on even individually, some come on together, and then we have individuals. We've found that it really hasn't made a difference if they're individual or couple, because maybe as a couple, they're typically dealing with interpersonal conflict with other family members in the business, and they're going through it together. So we do, right now, it's a combination of both. We didn't see as many couples wanting to come on or as many individuals, so we just blended them and it's worked out really well.
Awesome. And you mentioned that you had peer supporters. Are those peer supporters reaching out outside of those support groups, or are they just strictly supporting the support groups? Does that make sense?
That absolutely makes sense. And because we keep those confidential, I'm not on those Zoom calls. I've heard there's great relationships being built, but I don't know how far the connection goes. I will tell you our peer leaders, though, have really stepped up their game, and there's almost a fight of who gets to lead the groups every month because they have such great relationships with the farmers that I send out an email who wants to lead, and people are back to me like 1 minute, 2 minute, and they're lined up because they see the great value, and they're also then taking that and doing things in their communities.
Okay. Yeah, we've been exploring what do peer leaders and peer support people, peer listeners look like, and I might reach out more. I'm curious too, was there a specific training that you had you said that you trained these peer support people up. What did you provide for them?
Yes, so this was just pre-pandemic, and they came in-house for a 2-day full training. It was before I got here, but I do have all the information on the training they went through, and I'm happy to send that out.
That'd be awesome. Thanks.
Great questions. If you guys have any more questions for Karen, go ahead and drop them in the chat or save them for the very end, and we can go ahead and have her answer those. So we are going to move to our last speaker, Mr. Brian Hammer, and he has a unique aspect on mental health that I've been interested in for since last fall. It really kind of has been in my mind. So I'll let Brian go ahead and get his screen ready to share, and we can hear all about his project.
Are you able to see the screen? I thought I shared it.
No, sir.
Is it there now?
Nope.
Okay. It's highlighted like it's sharing. It says technology makes life easier.
Easier or more difficult. It depends on the day.
Okay, well.
There you go. It's starting.
There it is. Okay.
Here you are. All right,
Well,
take it away.
Okay, real quick. Brian Hammer, I work with Nationwide Insurance, which is the largest insurer of farms, ranches, and agribusinesses in the nation. My background, I spent 20 years in law enforcement, but worked on a family farm. We were row crop farmers, also raised tomatoes for Heinz ketchup here in the Quad City area on the Mississippi River between Iowa and Illinois. You know, my father-in-law was a long history farmer, so I get some of what I know from him from the aspect of not wanting to utilize technology. He's long since passed, but back in the 80s and 90s, he really didn't want it. He had his oldest son worked for IBM, so they were well aware of what technology could do, just didn't want to do it. But today, farmers are actually gravitating to technology. They can monitor their grain bin from their phone or their farrow house. All that stuff is extreme technology, and they're utilizing it. But what we see is that they don't want to utilize the technology when it comes to monitoring their vehicles or their trucks and their cars. And real quick, the number one way farmers and most any worker in the United States is killed at work is in a motor vehicle. I mean, we talk about Grain Bin Safety Awareness Week, which Nationwide is a sponsor of. And, we know farming is a very dangerous occupation, but actually getting killed in an accident is that. So my suggestion is that technology can make life just a little easier on the stress side. But when it comes to technology on telematics of following vehicles, back in the olden days, how did we know where, Frank went out, he left a note for his wife on the kitchen table. That's basically, what happened. You say, I'll be in this field here, I'll be over there. Then, you got to the point where you might get on we used mini bikes first, and then you went to, the ATVs, the quad ATV. You drove fields to look to where they're at, which is certainly inefficient. You may have used CB radios or other, radios in the past, but we've been kind of stuck on cell phones for the last few years, and we think that's a solution. But how many times does cell phones don't work? There's no service, or obviously we know that, we leave them in the truck or we leave them in the shop or something, so we don't have access to our cell phones, or we turn them off or turn the ringer down, which is, I've got my cell phone here. I've turned my ringer down, and I'll forget as soon as this meeting is over to turn it back up, and somebody will be calling me saying, why didn't I answer the phone? Or the battery is dead and the phone has died. And that is a constant problem that we have, and people don't know where people are. And if there's an emergency, they're not able to answer, or if there's an emergency, we may not know it. Vehicle telematics can actually help in that respect. Telematics are basically things that are either added to the vehicle, or we activate those telematics that are already in the vehicle. For instance, Ford has their new telematic system. So when you buy a new Ford, that's already installed. If you're operating GM equipment, OnStar has always been there. You just have to buy extra services to go with those to get some of the production. Now, on the ag side, we have found that our large farms that are employing a few number of hired hands to help, are receptive to telematics. But it's the smaller farms where they may only have one hired hand and it's run by the family, they're not. And I often wonder why. Because I know that my mother-in-law used to sit in that kitchen and worry because she hadn't heard from them. They didn't come back, at lunchtime like they were supposed to. And that, meant that she had to get in a vehicle and go look for them in that respect. So that stress is always there. So where are the loved ones currently located at? So telematics can tell us exactly where those vehicles are. We don't need the phone. we'll know where the vehicle is in that respect. So if for some reason you wanted to find out, you can go to the dashboard that can be downloaded to your cell phone or to your computer, and you'll know where every one of your vehicles that are equipped with telematics are located. And that includes farm equipment, right? You can have telematics that's connected to John Deere Connect or Slingshot, and get all that data that at least gives us our location and that. If you're managing a farm, you can know when that vehicle is started up and leaves or comes back for the end of the day. So if you're managing the farm, it's important. You can set notices that if all of a sudden your vehicle starts up and leaves, you'll get a text message that says, hey, vehicle X has left. Or you can call something we call geofence in, meaning basically you could say they can only be on the farm, but all of a sudden they leave that geofence, and you'll get a notification that that's there. And you can figure out how long they've been. You get all kinds of reports and tell you how long they've been idling, how long they've run, how long they've been moving in that respect. You can get the maintenance issues, right? They're connected to the engine control modules of the vehicle, so you'll get any engine diagnostic. You can get fuel, all that kind of stuff. But you also can get information as to how they're being driven, which is also a concern, right? As a farm owner and you have a hired hand, you are liable for the actions that your hired hands take while operating your vehicle. And that's a stressor right there, especially if as you're finding harder and harder to find the type of employees that you want, that you can trust. So you can get things like speeding and hard braking and hard turns and all those things, whether they're utilizing their seatbelt or not. The other one is you can also put cameras in these vehicles. Now, certain people will say, I wouldn't want to go that far, but there are such things as called live view cameras, where we can put a camera in the vehicle. It will record constantly, and it will record that person driving up and down the highway, but you can actually live view. So if somebody's sitting in their farm office and they want to see what the fields are looking like, they could turn the camera on right there and see whether that camera's in a tractor or combine or in a pickup truck. They can see exactly what's going on. So that's kind of new technology that's out there that can release some of the stress in that respect. So utilizing that technology is important, and it's very simple. There's certainly a cost to it, but in this case here, I got a screenshot there. I've got Eric's truck, and it's giving me data. It tells me where he's at, how fast he's going, what location that he's at. That's all extremely important information to help me run the farm better, but have better sense that things are being run right. Now, the biggest problem we will probably have, if it's a family farm, the idea that, I know where my brother-in-law is, he may not like that, but those are issues that have to be worked out, because the benefits far exceed the negative portion of it, which, I don't think any of us probably like to be tracked. But in the farm equipment, it is important. We can put sensors in a vehicle to know if that vehicle's rolled over. So if I'm driving a farm tractor and that rolls over, and if there's a rollover, it will send that indication that the vehicle's rolled over, and it'll give you the exact location where it's at. I mean, that's can put your mind at ease, especially if you've got some new employees or younger family members that are operating equipment, and you want to make sure that's done. So the idea that the technology is there, again, I think farmers understand there's all kinds of technologies they have. It just seems that putting the technology in their mobile equipment and their vehicles is one of the last things they look at. And I would suggest that it's probably one that can cause you the most stress. So telematics is a solution. You can certainly go to your insurance companies and see if they offer any programs. Obviously, Nationwide does in that respect. You can look at the vehicles you already have that may have those systems already placed in. Again, like I said, for instance, Ford just introduced their new ones. So there are ways to get that. And some of these programs actually integrate with the other programs you already have. So, the program that we have already integrates with John Deere Connect. So you can connect all those pieces together and you don't have to go to one place. But it is a stressor. I truly believe that. I think about harvest time and people who work late and don't come back to the shop on time, and you're worried about them, and the family farm has expanded. We farmed both in Iowa and Illinois, which meant we had to cross the river. It was a worry back then, and that's many times that was before the invention of the cell phone. So we just had to rely on hoping that they came, or we drove 20, 30 miles to check on them. So it is a solution. I think farmers ought to look at it to help them, kind of relieve that stress and put some of the advantages to their benefit. So, any questions?
I have a question, Brian. The whole time you were talking, I was thinking all of this is new technology. Is there a way, a device for the older farming equipment that you can install that and still get the same technology?
Yeah, there are ways to implement that technology now. For instance, your 1999 large trucks don't have the same kind of computing power in the engine that your 2000 larger, I'm talking semi trucks, but there are ways to do that. And there's all kinds of different mechanisms to do telematics. Some plug into the vehicle, some can actually just be software downloaded into your telephone. Of course, there you're limited to your cell phone reach in that respect, but you do get that information. So, you can download it on your cell phone, and that will tell you whether the person who's driving actually is using their cell phone, because it'll know that cell phone's being brought up to their ear or something in that respect. It'll also give you, their speed, their location, all those things. So there are other ways than just plugging into the vehicle. But more importantly, I think sometimes we have the technology in our larger ag equipment, in the larger tractors and the combines, but we don't put them on the smaller stuff. And there are certainly ways to add those to the smaller stuff, even to your UTVs, which is important because UTVs are a big thing with farms now. And I live in a community where you're allowed to drive them on the city streets, and in a state that allows them to be driven on county roads. So, and if your UTV is like mine, it goes 55 miles an hour. And is that a safe vehicle to go 55 miles an hour on some country roads? The answer is no. If you have a hired hand, could you monitor that? And the answer is yes. So yeah, it could even be on those types of equipment.
I'm thinking this can be, if you want to implement this can be just like any other farm expense that you can deduct, on
Well,
your
that's
tax.
important because that is true. These things will give you mileage and stuff too. So it's giving you information that the IRS wants you to put on your tax filing form. So I will know the mileage of my equipment, and also it will give me maintenance issues, so I can know when I some will actually allow you to log in your maintenance of your equipment. So not only does it tell you you're overdue for the oil change, it'll help you log that to show that you've actually changed the oil and that stuff. So obviously, in that respect. So yeah, the technology is widespread. I think cameras, if you've ever seen a dash cam camera video where it shows the out front and then the driver, that's exciting. Some people are really scared or skeptical of that. But I think from a farm view that on a tractor, if I had live view where I could just dial in my tractor and look right out the windshield and see where that person is at, those things are available today.
Especially when you're putting your kids or maybe your older parents out there in there just to kind of check in.
Well, I resemble the older parent remark, so I will go by that. But let's face it, when I was a police officer, younger people driving vehicles, and we just had a gentleman I work with who lost his brother 2 weeks ago, a younger individual on the farm, a farmer, crashed his pickup truck at 2 o'clock in the morning, and that truck was not located until the morning. So they laid in a ditch unaware that they crashed till somebody saw that vehicle in the morning. In this case, if they'd had the telematics in there, it would have indicated that the vehicle did roll over. It would have gave that indication and would have sent a text message to whoever, if that vehicle was on the system, it would have sent a text message saying, hey, you have a incident of a possible rollover, and give you the exact location. And you could have called 911 and sent them to that location, even if it was a while for you to get there. So.
Wow. So I have a question in the chat. Farmers are always like a year in advance trying to set out their budget. So what is the type of cost for this kind of technology?
Well, that all depends on what kind of technology you're going to add. And then again, I would encourage you to check with your insurance carrier. Obviously, we offer some discounts based on our relationship with the carrier that we have. And we went with a company called Razor Tracking. I'm not here to sell that, but it is ag based. I mean, they've had a long history in agricultural. They have relationships. They were actually connected with John Deere Connect and all those things. So it just depends. Now, the vehicle tracking portion, and a lot of it depends on the number you put there, but you may be talking about a $25 a vehicle a month service fee and whatever they might charge you for a dongle to plug in. Most of them will plug into your OBD2 port, your diagnostic port on your pickup truck, or your diagnostic port on your tractor or whatever. Cameras are obviously, probably a little more expensive. So you're going to buy a camera, $200-300. I don't see a lot of people going for cameras, but I'm just suggesting that as technology makes this stuff cheaper, you'll start looking at it. 5 years ago, cameras would have been $700-800. The price has just come down. And actually they have, artificial intelligence cameras that actually look at cues. So if the driver starts nodding off and falling asleep, that camera recognizes my eyes are down, they're down for a length of time, or my eyelids are shut, and thereby, records that and makes an instance of this person may be operating fatigue. So again, it depends, but I would easily budget at least $25 a month for the vehicle that you're going to have. But then all that is dependent on probably the number of pieces of equipment. Obviously, the more equipment you have, that price is probably reduced. So, and you have to be careful. The one thing I would urge you to be careful of, telematics providers sometimes like your cell phone companies like to lock you in for long-term contracts. I would be very, skeptical when anybody wants to lock me in for long-term contract. And so, which is why Nationwide went with the company we did, because they actually have no contract, and they actually let you suspend service for 6 months because you may have a fertilizer truck you only operate 4 or 5 months a year. So they allow you to suspend that service for 6 months. So you look for those things that benefit your operation.
I think Tara had a question for you.
Yes, I do. I'm sorry. My dog was insisting on getting out. This is fantastic. Now, I'm a mental health person, but I'm kind of a technology geek, and I love something that increases safety, decreases death, decreases medical response time. I mean, wow. Are there any federal programs out there that can help farmers financially curb the cost if they want to implement this? I like the fact that you linked it to insurance with discounts sometimes on your insurance. Are there any other programs out there?
I don't think there's anything granted to on the federal level to farmers. Obviously, it is a cost of doing business, so there's your ability to put that into your operation. So the answer is no. Telematics on vehicles has been around a long time. Obviously, trucking industry utilizes it. A lot of your companies, Uber, for instance, they put a lot of telematics in their vehicles. I think those are software based on your phone. So there's benefits and distractions for both, but no. But again, the cost is coming down. So, for instance, if you're buying that new Ford, that technology is already installed, or that GM product, it's already installed on your vehicle. I think Toyota has one too, that you can then buy the subscription and manage it. So that's there. Also, cameras, I believe it or not, cameras are starting to be installed on newer vehicles, because the collision mitigation system, the LiDAR system, is actually a camera. So it may not be long before all new vehicles come with a camera. Obviously, Tesla has cameras all around its vehicle, so it may not be improbable that that Ford pickup truck that I buy in the near future will have an operating camera, so I don't have to buy a camera in the second market, because it's already installed with one. So
okay, thank you.
Okay. Next questions.
I'm Dawn Morales. I'm from the National Institute of Mental Health. I was curious to know if there's any research that's been conducted. I'm aware that telematics and workplace technology can be quite the stressor potentially. And you're speaking of it as something that can reduce stress from the management perspective, but from the worker perspective, that may not always be consistently the case. And I was curious to know if you're aware of any data assessing what the impact is like on the lower ranking staff.
Well, I can't speak to that on the farm, but we can speak to that as it comes into the trucking industry, right? Because truckers have been exposed to it for a long time. And does it present stress to that truck driver in that respect? And cameras are probably the biggest one, because a large percentage of truck drivers have an initial reaction that they do not want cameras installed in their vehicles. But let's go back just a few years ago. A lot of trucks didn't have telematics, but then when the federal government required electronic logging devices instead of that old paper log that truck drivers used to forge a lot, and I worked in the trucking industry, so that electronic logging device is basically a jump start to a telematic device. A lot of kickback there, a lot of stressors, but then it actually made their life easier. So it takes a while, but I think they know it. Do the lower level employees feel the stress of being watched? Probably, but it's pretty much, we all know that we're being watched. I'm being watched now as I sit at home. I can guarantee you my company's making sure that I sit at my computer so many hours a day because I'm working from home. They just can't write that off. So I think as a populace, we're probably getting more used to understanding that we're being tracked. So I don't think that there's a stress there. I think there's the acknowledgement that, hey, I know I'm being followed. I spent 20 years as a police officer. I left law enforcement before body cameras came into effect. So I know that, initially body cameras were really stressful for police officers. Those police officers have gotten used to them. That is actually something that they just had to grow accustomed to. So.
Thank you.
Linda, do you have a last question?
I do, and it's kind of a two-part. So I'm Linda Emanuel, producer here in East Central Nebraska, and in our farm we have a number of employees as well as my husband. So two-part question. With this telematics, I've gotten that 911 call from my husband. We've got a combine fire. I need you to come out. Will it help you to locate them, because he can't always tell me road coordinates if it's a field that I'm unfamiliar with?
Yeah, it does. It pinpoints it usually within 10 feet. Most of them are that exact, so it'll actually give them to it. So yeah, you'll know exactly now. Obviously, if it's a big field, it'll give you an idea where we're at in the field, but at least tell you which field it is at. Some of these telematic devices are also used for dispatching services. So, we have our ag customers, and they can actually pinpoint the drive in the field that they want the co-op's, tender truck to come to, or something in that respect. So They are pretty exact.
Nice. Well, that's great to know.
Just to go back to your combine fire, nationwide, I've been sitting on a committee. We were trying to address combine fires because that is a big loss. It's a big loss not only to the farmer, and it's a big loss to the insurance company, but it's a very serious one that we've taken serious on, and we are looking at all kinds of mechanisms to prevent them, to reduce the loss, that kind of thing. Your second question, I'm sorry.
No, I appreciate that, because as our climate changes, right, feeling we're going to have more and more of these combine fires. Second part is, does Nationwide offer incentives if you prove that you're a safe driver based on the data that comes from this technology?
Well, initially, we are in that aspect of collecting data to determine how it correlates, right? So what we are trying to do as an insurance company is the underwriters trying to understand, what does the data say? If, for instance, if an account has this many hard breaks consistently, are they more liable to have accidents in an effort to better underwrite the account? So at this time, the answer is not necessarily that aspect, but underwriters have what they call discretionary ability. So when they look at an account, we know that things like telematics do reduce accidents. We know that things like collision mitigation systems you would buy in your cars and stuff do reduce. So they can get that feel, and if they have that sense that you have them and you utilize them, there may be a discount based on the fact that. But currently, you're answering, is there a set discount? The answer is no. Those discounts have to be filed with the insurance underwriters in each state, and you have to have the data to prove that up. So, but I would assume that is the ultimate goal. And other insurance companies are doing the same. They're collecting the data, trying to get it in that respect. But and let's be honest, and as things go, I don't want to be political here, but there's just some discussion of having you pay your road use taxes by mile. How will the federal government know what miles you have? You'll have a device in your vehicle that tracks your miles, and you'll get a bill from the state, for your vehicle miles use, rather than maybe paying it in your fuel purchases, those kind of things. So that
That's
technology is kind of coming your way.
And that is exciting, is the one that helps with the taxes. That's very exciting.
Well, remember now, electric cars don't pay road use tax, right? Because they don't buy fuel, which is where most states are collecting their fuel tax. So there have to be other ways to do that. So.
Thank you.
All right, Brian, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and put your contact information in the chat for anybody who wants to contact you. We're right at time, so we are recording this month, so I will get that out hopefully by the end of the week to everyone, so you can either rewatch or feel free to go ahead and send the link on to any other person in your company or anyone you just think would be interested in listening to what we talked about today. It is a private link, so remember you have to forward the exact link to them. So hopefully we will see you guys all back in June. Our AgriStress meeting is always the first Wednesday of the month. So first Wednesday in June. And
hey, Carrie, can I make a quick request? For
yes,
some reason,
please.
my Zoom isn't allowing me to copy and record the chat. If anybody's able to do that, usually I have 3 little dots that allows me to record the chat, but it's not giving it to me. So if you're able to do that, could you send that out? Because I'd love to have some of these contacts. I just can't get them because I can't cut and paste off of it either.
Okay, I will check. It's not my Zoom room, so before I close, I will see if we can do that.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, perfect. All right, everyone, we thank you so much and see you next month.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye.
Sarah and Carrie, you guys want to just stay on and we can follow up
Yeah,
here?
I was
Okay.
thinking that as well.
Okay, so you should be able to, as far as getting the chat text, you should be able to, I think you should be able to right click it and grab it.
And do select
Thank
all.
you everyone for presenting too.
Thank you.
So is there a way to record the chat? Or let me stop recording.